Welcome back, and a very special welcome to our next guest. His name is Joseph Bosco. He has served in a number of capacities in the United States government over the years, including as the China desk officer in the Office of the Secretary of Defense, a position that is critical to our Defense Department's policy approach and programs vis a vis the Chinese Communist Party, our most mortal enemy. It's always good to have a chance to catch up with him, especially at a moment when, in the wake of the Ukraine invasion by Russia, the Chinese are clearly musing what to do about their territorial ambitions, specifically vis-a-vis Taiwan. Joe Bosco has given a lot of thought to the topic. We're glad to have a chance to pick his brain. Welcome back, sir. It's good to have you with us at Securing America.
Thank you. Great to be back with you.
So I'd like to drill down on what you think Xi Jinping, the dictator of China, is making of what his partner, strategic ally, whatever you want to call him, Vladimir Putin, has done in Ukraine to this point, and whether it is causing some rethinking on Xi's part about his desire to use force. He's made no secret of that against Taiwan for the purpose of attaching it firmly in with the mainland under China's dominion.
Well, I think it's important to keep in mind that, what was it, a month ago or 6 weeks ago, the Olympics in Beijing began, and Xi Jinping and Putin met and issued a 5,000 word statement of aligning their interests and their so called values against the West. And it was a declaration of, I think they called it, no limits strategic partnership. Uh, since then, of course, a few days later, Putin invaded Ukraine. The first question was, did Xi know that he was going to do that? Was that part of the planning? And if he did not know, has he been surprised and feel perhaps betrayed by Putin?
Well, and
My
what's
own
your
thought is
answer to
that
that question?
he,
Do you have any doubt that
I think he
Xi
was
and Putin
not.
talked about it?
I think that they did talk about it, and I think that he may not have said explicitly the date and how much he was going to invade, but there was no doubt that the military forces that he had assembled there were intended to make a move, unless he got the kind of concessions that he was demanding, which were non-negotiable from Ukraine's standpoint. That is, giving up any idea of getting into NATO and sacrificing its sovereignty. So I don't think she was surprised. What I think has surprised him is the unanimity of the West, of the rest of the world, against this move, and he's having second thoughts as to whether he got himself into a situation where China's reputation is being damaged by the things that Putin is doing.
And how would you
Not
characterize,
that
Joe,
that
what China is now doing with respect to Russia? There was talk early on that it was going to provide support. It was going to be buying Russian energy. It was otherwise going to try to fill in whatever punishment the sanctions were meting out. Has that happened, or has there been some of that, but some backing away from Russia as well?
well, clearly it's not been very overt. It's not transparent whatever they're doing, and I think we'll only discover that after the fact. But certainly, I don't think he wants to be quite open about supporting Putin. On the other hand, he hasn't condemned him either. He hasn't said this was a horrible thing to do and talk about human rights and all the rest. That's not his bag. Um, so I think ultimately, what China will, how this will affect their planning and their decisions, is how the thing turns out in Ukraine. Keep in mind that in 2008, uh, Putin invaded Georgia, didn't pay an intolerable price for that. 2014, he invaded eastern Ukraine and took Crimea, hasn't paid an intolerable price for that. So, in the long run, he's made steady progress. Now, China may well be thinking, why don't we do that? Seize perhaps Quemoy or some outside island of Taiwan's and take it step by step the way Putin has. It depends on how it turns out now, whether Putin has overplayed his hand.
Let me ask you about sort of two scenarios. One is, as you say, that they're watching and waiting. Um, Xi, who's determined to get a third term, presumably a formality out of the People's Congress in the fall, but doesn't want to risk any mishaps there. Also facing some internal pressure, some opposition that seems to be inserting itself rather more aggressively these days. On the other hand, there are those who say, well, actually, for those reasons, assuming the cost to Putin is not excessively high, Xi may see this as an opportunity to engage in what tyrants often do in difficult circumstances, so called social engineering, to try to get people to rally around the flag by getting into a scrape over Taiwan. What's your bookmaking at the moment, Joe Bosco, as to how this is likely to play out, assuming that the situation is more or less as it is now in Ukraine?
Well, as we know, Xi Jinping has even less concern for public opinion in China than Putin has in Russia. They've clamped down totally, and so he doesn't have to worry quite as much as about public revulsion at his association with Putin. But I think he won't. Again, I don't think he'll make a move in the near future, but he may be contemplating what he's going to do some months down the road when the furor over Ukraine has subsided. Um, but certainly he will do, as you say, stir nationalism. That's a given constantly in both China and Russia. Talk about the oppressive West and how it's interfering in their internal affairs and all the rest. But I don't think he'll make an overt move immediately. But he certainly is watching to see how he can play it over the long term. And I think he feels overall his hand has been strengthened. We haven't mentioned the unity of the West as much as we should.
Hold
Uh,
that thought because we're going to come back
it's
to it on the
yeah,
other side of a very short break. Joe Bosco, we're going to
okay.
also talk about what the United States should be doing under these circumstances to learn the lessons of Ukraine and deter the possibility of Xi making the calculation that he can, in fact, attack Taiwan with impunity, a calculation that his friend Vladimir Putin mistakenly made in Ukraine. That and more with Joe Bosco right after this.